Everyone believed he was a weak orphan in a new world with E-rank skills, but he exacts revenge by destroying them all. Tuka was a troubled kid, abused in his own home by his mother's new boyfriend after his father's death. Every day, the poor boy was beaten up, barely receiving anything to eat, as he cowered in a corner, shielding himself, while his cruel mother watched TV, ignoring his cries of pain. As a result, he grew up a lonely, weak kid with no confidence. He wakes up from a nightmare where his stepfather was beating him, only to hear the class bully, Sho, picking on a nice girl named Ya. Sho snatches her book and waves it around in the air, mocking her for reading girly novels because this ignorant idiot doesn't understand that girls can read whatever they want. Tuka imagines how, in a TV show, he'd be the hero who stops the bullying and earns everyone's admiration. But he knows that, in reality, no one on the bus cares. If he stands up for her, his frail body will just get him beaten up. The most popular students support Sho, while the others laugh along to avoid becoming the next target. The teacher, useless and asleep, does nothing as Sho relentlessly demands Ya's phone number. Without realizing it, Tuka stands up, looks Sho in the eyes, and tells him to leave her alone. Sho laughs, calling him weak, until Kiri, the most popular guy in class, steps in and tells Sho to return the book. Sho obeys, handing the book back to Ya, then moves on to torment another nerd, Yasu. Tuka wonders why he stood up for her, something completely out of character for him. But before he can think further, everyone on the bus is transported to another world. They're all utterly confused, finding themselves in a strange place while a beautiful goddess stands atop a bridge and introduces herself as Vicious. She explains that whenever the threat of a demon king arises, the kingdom of alien summons brave warriors from other worlds to defend the realm. 200 years ago, the demon king nearly destroyed the kingdom, but thanks to powerful heroes, he was defeated and the entire demon army wiped out. Unfortunately, the Demon King has been resurrected, which is why they've all been brought to this world to fight as the new heroes who will stop him. The students are completely bewildered, wondering if they're dead or if it's some kind of joke. Their teacher tells them to be quiet and listen to what the goddess has to say. Tuka looks around at the ancient architecture, the soldiers clad in armor holding spears, and the goddess with her golden eyes. He pinches himself to check if it's a dream. Kiri speaks up and asks the goddess what happens if they don't cooperate, to which Vicious smiles and replies that she won't be able to send them back to their world. Kiri then asks if there's really a way to return, and Vicious explains that a reverse summoning ritual exists, which can send them home, but to perform it, they must kill the Demon King and obtain the evil element, which only drops when he dies. Sho yells at the goddess for dragging them into a new world without a choice and refuses to help. But Vicious kneels down and begs them to save her kingdom from destruction. A student speaks up, saying they're just ordinary humans who can't do anything, but Vicious assures them they possess abilities they never knew about. Sho still believes it's all a joke, so Vicious decides to prove it. She summons a prisoner of war and a giant demon dog. The dog immediately lunges at the prisoner, killing him. Several girls, horrified, fall to their knees as Vicious chants a spell and incinerates the monster in a blaze of fire, erasing it from existence. She then calls the students forward, telling them they'll now measure their latent abilities one by one. Each student steps up to a crystal ball, checking their abilities as the ball glows in different colors. After the nerds go through, Sho approaches the crystal. As soon as his hand touches it, the ball glows bright red. Vicious looks pleased and announces that Sho has A-rank skills. Then Kiri steps up, and when he touches the ball, it shines gold before exploding. Afterward, he also checks her abilities and she, too, is revealed to be A-rank. After a few more students, another girl steps up and is also A-rank. The guards are shocked as Vicious explains that even having one A-rank person is extremely rare, but having 3 is unheard of. Finally, Tuka steps up to the crystal. When he touches it, the ball glows a dull purple. The goddess barely acknowledges him, quickly calling the next person. Tuka tries to ask what rank he is, but she ignores him completely. Realizing that even in this world, he's destined to remain a background character, he walks away. Then Yasu, the nerd, steps up and discovers he possesses a special dark ability that once belonged to a powerful dark hero, who became the strongest of his time. After everyone checks their stats, Vicious tells them they also have personal abilities that vary from person to person. Then, she announces it's time for an important ritual. She calls Tuka to the front, and a guard roughly pushes him into a dark pit. Vicious declares that Tuka is E-rank, the lowest in the entire class. Historically, E-rank individuals cause problems and are usually eliminated. But since they have so many strong heroes this time, she'll give him a chance to survive. Tuka will be sent to an abandoned ruin, a dungeon far away where criminals and monsters are sent. If he manages to survive, he will earn the right to live. Otherwise, he'll lose his life. Tuka tries to argue that he can improve, but Vicious tells him he's a failure, meaning his stats are so low that even with intense training, he won't get better. Angrily, Tuka says he never asked to be brought there, that he was summoned against his will only to be thrown away. But Kiri cuts him off, saying he's wasting everyone's time, and the girls are already tired. The whole class agrees. Defeated, Tuka collapses to the ground. Yasu approaches, and Tuka remembers how he once helped Yasu after being bullied, but Yasu rejects him, saying an E-ranker should show more respect to his superiors. Tuka loses all hope as the goddess begins the ceremony. During the ritual, they throw a leather bag at Tuka as his special item, but it turns out to be completely useless. He tries to defend him, saying that this isn't fair. Frustrated beyond measure, Tuka raises his arm and casts a paralysis spell at the goddess, but she easily blocks it and mocks him, calling him a loser for even attempting to hit her with his low-level E-ranked skills. Kiri also steps in, casting a massive fireball spell, saying he was just testing it by using a small amount of mana. Everyone laughs at the huge difference in power between themselves and someone like Tuka. Tuka, feeling defeated, lowers his head as tears roll down his face, recalling how he used to cry as a child. Suddenly, a voice from within his soul urges him to stop pretending to be kind and show his true nature, the side of him he's been suppressing for so long. Finally, Tuka snaps, looking up with hatred in his eyes. He curses the goddess, calling her a rotten hoe, and warns her to be prepared if he ever returns alive. Instantly, he is teleported into a dark cave. Trying to access his status screen, he fails because of the dim lighting. He channels some mana into the leather bag, which causes the gem inside to light up, acting as a lantern as he navigates the cave. It's then that Tuka realizes he's walking on skeletons, which sends a shiver down his spine. He wonders what could have wiped out all these people when a monster suddenly attacks. He narrowly avoids the blow and starts running as fast as he can, the creature hot on his trail. As he runs, Tuka debates whether he should turn and fight, but deep down, he knows that the level gap is so vast that stopping would mean certain death. Overcome with fear, he trips over a rock and falls to the ground. When he looks up, the monster is closing in. Frustration over his life choices fuels him, and just as the beast is about to strike, Tuka makes a last-ditch attempt to save himself, casting his paralysis spell. To his astonishment, the monster is frozen in place. He quickly scrambles to his feet and continues running. Before long, Tuka reaches the end of the cave, where another bird-like demon approaches him with deadly intent. Tuka instinctively raises his arm again, casting the paralysis spell, which once more immobilizes the enemy. Realizing that it wasn't a fluke, he starts to feel the exhaustion set in. He checks his status screen and sees that his mana is almost entirely drained. Desperate, he tries his poison spell, which proves effective as the demon's body turns black and begins to bleed. Tuka slumps down on the cave floor, wondering why his spells are suddenly so effective against these creatures. Out of nowhere, Tuka hears a noise behind him. He turns to see that the Minotaur demon has broken free of his paralysis spell and is about to deliver the final blow. Instead of fleeing, all the anger and resentment toward those who mistreated him floods back. Even though he's completely spent, Tuka lifts his arms toward the demon, determined to fight for his life. He challenges the creature, not knowing if he'll survive this time. His body instinctively enters survival mode, and he tries to figure out any possible escape route. Surrounded by monsters waiting to tear him apart, he wonders if he can still use his skills despite having no mana. Recalling that in the games he played, using skills without mana could be fatal, he decides to take the risk, knowing that if he does nothing, he'll surely die. He targets one of the monsters and uses his paralysis spell, but this time it fails. The creature launches a relentless attack, forcing Tuka to dodge and retreat. Realizing that casting the same spell twice on the same monster won't work, he notices that he has unlocked a new spell, Sleep. Just as the monster is about to crush him, Tuka casts the Sleep spell, and to his relief, the creature collapses, motionless. He quickly follows up with the poison spell, ensuring the monster won't come back to life. But using his skills without mana is taking a serious toll on his body. Before Tuka can catch his breath, a massive horde of monsters charges toward him. Thinking quickly, he uses his enchanted bag like a flashbang, blinding the creatures, and immediately begins casting paralysis spells to stop them in their tracks. As he stands there, he contemplates using his poison spell on all of them, but he's too weak. Suddenly, more monsters emerge from the depths of the dungeon, overwhelming his senses. Despite the odds, Tuka decides he won't go down without a fight and starts casting paralysis on any monster that gets close. His body starts to feel heavy, and he becomes dizzy, but he forces himself to keep fighting. Just as he's about to lose hope, Tuka levels up, and with it, his mana and status are fully restored. This gives him the power to fire off even more paralysis spells, saving himself for now. Realizing he leveled up because the bird demon died from his poison, Tuka gets an idea. He begins paralyzing all the monsters, determined to gain as many levels as possible while battling for his life. He unlocks a new ability that lets him paralyze entire groups of enemies at once. As he does, he wonders why his spell didn't work on the goddess, especially since it's been 100% effective in the dungeon. Casually, he walks past the immobilized enemies, casting his poison spell on them as he goes. When the monsters start dying, he levels up again and sits on a rock, grinning as he realizes he's created a real-life XP farm, much like in Minecraft, where he can gain levels quickly. Checking his status, he's shocked to see that he's already reached level 250, with an enormous pool of mana. Another monster falls, and once again, Tuka gains several levels at once. He then uses his sleep spell on the remaining monsters, hoping to level it up as well. When one of the creatures dies, he earns more levels, eventually reaching level 500 within just a few minutes. Confident that he can now escape alive with this many levels, he stays cautious, as there are still many monsters around. He stands up and observes the remaining creatures, but suddenly, they turn and flee from him. He scavenges whatever equipment he can find from the corpses of fallen adventurers, managing to acquire a cloak and a few other small items. As he ventures deeper into the cave, encountering even more monsters, Tuka realizes he hasn't eaten in a long time and is extremely hungry. Unsure where to find food, he remembers the monsters he's already killed. Returning to the site of the massacre, he finds a creature on which the poison spell has worn off. He draws his sword and tries to carve some meat, only to find that the skin is too tough. Frustrated, Tuka wonders if he'll die of starvation even after defeating all the monsters. Then, he notices the gem on his bag glowing purple. Curious, he opens the bag and is surprised to find some jerky and a bottle of cola inside. Overcome with emotion, he hungrily gulps down the drink, nearly choking, and devours the jerky in peace. He marvels at how the bag works and wonders if it will provide more food in the future. 2 days pass, and Tuka grows so powerful that he can now defeat large hordes of deadly monsters with ease, sitting calmly on a rock and casting spells thanks to his near-infinite mana supply. Surveying the scene of carnage, he reflects on his life and what went wrong for him to end up in this situation. He recalls his childhood dreams of killing his mother's abusive boyfriend, knowing that if he hadn't, the man would have eventually killed him. Fortunately, his life changed when his aunt and uncle rescued him from that miserable existence and raised him. He had decided then to be a good person, always kind to others. Snapping back to the present, Tuka looks around at the destruction he's caused. Though he feels no sorrow for the dead, he realizes that he was always a monster deep down and decides to embrace it. After leveling up again to level 950, Tuka continues deeper into the dungeon, where he encounters a floating eye monster, which he quickly kills with his paralyzed poison combo. Moving ahead, he discovers a room where 2 adventurers have died. Searching their belongings, he finds a bag full of gems, which he takes before continuing. Eventually, he enters a large room where he finds a skeleton. Upon inspecting the body, he discovers a wound that caused the person's death and a parchment with a message. The note reveals that the skeleton belongs to the dark hero Vicey had mentioned. The dark hero writes that he was sent here by the evil goddess Vis after she had no further use for him, warning anyone who finds the letter never to trust her. Angrily, Tuka crumples the parchment, realizing that the Demon King isn't the only evil being in this world. The goddess herself is just as wicked. Inside the dark hero's bag, Tuka finds a giant magical book filled with dark magic techniques for creating items and spells. He also finds a scroll but is unable to read it, so he puts it in his bag. After taking the hero's clothes, Tuka notices a bloodstain on one of the pages, which states that the Soul Eater killed everyone. Grateful to the dead hero, Tuka leaves and walks through the corridors until he finds a massive door. He realizes he needs to unlock something to open it, so he checks his status and sees that he is now at level 1200. Tuka wonders if he's strong enough to kill the Soul Eater, who waits in the next hallway. As he tries to enter, a beam strikes him, grazing his hand and forcing him to bandage it. He wonders how he can defeat an entity that even the Dark Hero couldn't defeat, concluding that the Soul Eater is the final boss and the key to escaping this place. Suddenly, the Soul Eater begins moving toward him, vomiting a disgusting substance that transforms into half-dead humans. Tuka paralyzes them but can't bring himself to use poison since they still look somewhat human. Meanwhile, the Soul Eater breaks through the wall, screaming. Tuka, overwhelmed and in mental agony, tries to retreat, but more half-dead humans push him into a corner. He cries out for help, amusing the Soul Eater, who laughs at his suffering. But this is exactly what Tuka had been waiting for. The moment the monster drops its guard, Tuka casts his paralysis spell, and the Soul Eater falls to the ground, stunned. Tuka laughs, boasting that he tricked the demon with his acting, knowing it was the only way to make the creature lower its defenses. He tells the Soul Eater that all his life, he pretended to be a kind, harmless person, but now his true self has emerged. In this kill-or-be-killed world, Tuka no longer cares how many half-dead humans the monster spews out. It doesn't matter to him. Whether it's a monster, a half-dead human, or a living person, Tuka is ready to kill them all without remorse. The Soul Eater begins bleeding from its eyes as Tuka calmly walks over and uses his sleep spell on everyone around him, finishing them off for good. After a while, the Soul Eater dies, and a stream of souls escapes its body, transforming into ethereal human forms. They thank Tuka for defeating the monster, explaining that they had been trapped inside it with no way of escaping while it killed countless others. Finally, the Dark Hero appears and urges Tuka to deal with the evil goddess before vanishing. Tuka retrieves the gem from the Soul Eater's body and approaches the main gate. Placing the gem in the door, it opens. He wonders what he'll do once he gets his hands on the goddess. Meanwhile, far away in the forests outside the royal capital, the rest of Tuka's classmates are busy hunting demons to gain levels, while Sho chases a demon dog with a sword. Kiri uses his powerful skill to incinerate another monster, reaching level 18 successfully. Meanwhile, Yasu, who has undergone a complete personality change, uses his dark flames to burn some monsters and laughs at their cries. Far away, a shy and innocent girl named Koba struggles with the idea of killing any monsters, but a bully named Aggie insists she must do so or face death, as this is the first test given by the goddess. Aggie keeps Koba tightly controlled and warns her that soon the class will fragment into various factions because of the many selfish people among them. Being a B rank, Aggie intends to form her own faction with the girls who follow her. She knows that Koba, being only a D rank, won't be accepted by Kiri's faction or other powerful ones, and even Yasu won't be able to take her in, as she will die soon. Koba is terrified by this, but Aggie dismisses her concerns about minor details. Aggie just wants Koba to be her personal plaything and has instructed the girls in her faction to trap a monster for her to easily finish off. Aggie demands that Koba kill the monster and pass the test given by Vic, or she will be discarded like Tuka. Koba is reluctant to kill the pitiful monster, but Aggie pressures her into it, effectively forcing her to act. Eventually, Koba kills the monster, but the act of violence devastates her, reminding her of a time when Nemo helped an injured stray kitten. Overcome with guilt, she cries, feeling she failed Tuka. Meanwhile, A also comes back to her senses, her gut pain reminding her of how the goddess knocked her out before sending Tuka away. She immediately confronts Goddess Vic, who puts on a poor performance, claiming she was also deeply hurt by sending Tuka into danger, but it is the kingdom's policy. Vic adds that the ritual to remove the weakest member of the group will continue, and while Yasu was asleep, she has already sent away those who couldn't kill a single demon. Yasu is furious with the goddess and tells her that her methods are wrong. Vic dismisses this, saying everyone is entitled to their own opinions, but she won't change her ways to accommodate them. Yasu then suggests that as an S-rank hero, she will work hard to cover for those who can't perform well enough, and in return, she wants Vic to stop banishing them. Vic agrees to this arrangement and asks Yasu to shake hands to put the past behind them and start afresh. Elsewhere, in the dark forests bordering the abandoned ruins, a woman is fleeing from a group of nasty bandits. However, she is careless and leaves easy clues for them. The bandits plan to let her run until she is exhausted because they will eventually corner and capture her. At the same time, Tuka emerges from the ruins, checking his stats and finding his mana over 59,000. However, he is more interested in learning about his skills. He discovers he can use the paralysis skill on specific body parts of his target, in addition to their entire body. He can also weaken his poison skill to make it non-lethal. He plans to test these abilities once he encounters some demons. As he continues walking, he hears squeaking sounds from behind the trees and discovers a group of slimes bullying a smaller slime. Tuka feels sympathy for the small slime, which shows more courage than usual and fights back against its bullies. Tuka decides it's the perfect moment to test his new skills. He paralyzes all the slimes and applies non-lethal poison to the bullies. He then dispels the poison and paralysis effects from the bullies, making them flee. He turns to the small slime, praising it for standing up to the bullies. Tuka informs the slime that he will release it from paralysis and asks it not to attack him. He releases the skill and continues on his way, but the slime follows him. Tuka decides to adopt the slime, thinking it is another outcast like himself. He places the slime in his hood to keep watch behind him and alert him to danger. Meanwhile, Tuka reads a book on forbidden arts by the Dark Hero and finds a recipe for a medicine that can strengthen even slimes. He tells the small slime that he is on a quest for vengeance against those who wronged him and asks if it still wants to follow him. The slime agrees, and Tuka names it Pig Maru, which the slime likes. Tuka continues his journey, but suddenly he is surrounded by the bandits pursuing the mysterious woman. The bandits were trying to tire her out, but detected another presence and decided to have some fun. The bandit leader demands Tuka hand over all his valuables or face death. Tuka is terrified, as the bandits look menacing, and he has never fought humans before. The bandits argue about catching the girl quickly versus wasting time with random strangers, giving Tuka a chance to sneak away. However, the leader orders him to stop. Tuka begs for his life, but this only makes the bandit more determined to kill him. The leader charges at Tuka, but it turns out Tuka was just pretending to be scared. He uses his paralysis skill to stop the leader's movement and takes his time to berate the bandits, calling them scum. He says that, despite being weaker than the demons of the ruins, their evil intentions are even more intense. Even Pig Maru is enraged by the bandits. Tuka says that killing such people won't weigh on his conscience and that he is happy to have eased the burden on Earth. He casts a poison spell on all the bandits, and once they die, Tuka senses another presence nearby. The presence belongs to the mysterious girl, who has used her tribe's special technique to summon spiritual armor for protection. She can also sense Tuka's presence and detects someone very powerful nearby, though the aura is uncertain. She doesn't want to take chances and swings her sword, cutting through a bush where Pig Maru was hiding. Tuka then arrives behind her and paralyzes her. She stammers, asking what he wants, and he says he only wants information because he is new to the area. The girl asks about the 4 bandits, and Tuka inquires if they are her allies. She denies it, and Tuka believes her, as she lacks the evil intent the bandits had. He removes the paralysis skill from her head, so she can talk freely and warns her not to try anything or he will kill her. Tuka tells her that he doesn't trust anyone, especially strangers he is meeting for the first time. Before he can question her, the girl asks what happened to the 4 bandits. Tuka tells her he killed all of them, and she is shocked, because the group of thugs was known for their impressive strength. She asks Tuka if he fought all 4 of them by himself or if he had assistants. Tuka, however, refuses to provide any details. The girl, believing that Tuka is not a bad person, decides to trust him and says she will answer any questions he asks truthfully. Tuka starts to trust her a bit more due to her cooperative attitude, but this is still not enough to release her. As they talk, Tuka learns that he is not in the alien kingdom, but in the forest of the Urza kingdom to the south. He gains a lot of information and then finally asks the girl if she can read the forbidden spell scroll. She can only tell him that it is written in a unique type of ancient script that almost no one can read, but she knows someone who can. She mentions a person called the Forbidden Witch, who was exiled from her homeland due to her excessive knowledge being deemed too dangerous. The girl advises Tuka to visit the Golden Demon Zone if he wants to meet the witch, as it is a perilous area in the heart of the continent. Tuka thanks the girl for the valuable information, and she thanks him in return for rescuing her from the bandits. Tuka says the information balances things out, and the girl wishes him good luck. He finds her honesty and innocence endearing, reminding him of his aunt. After telling the girl that the paralysis spell will wear off in a few minutes, allowing her to go on her way, he decides to leave. Piggy, his pet slime, hops onto his shoulder. They discuss how it's unlikely the girl will attack them once she's free from the paralysis spell, but Tuka still wants his slime partner to keep an eye out just in case. Tuka soon arrives in a small town named Mills, where a female knight on duty is rather curious about his business. She suspects he's a country bumpkin who has come to work as a mercenary and raid some ruins. However, she grants him permission to enter because the town lord has ordered that all mercenaries be allowed in, especially those planning to raid the ruins. Tuka thanks her and heads inside, noting the lax security, as they didn't even check his luggage or ask for identification, which works to his advantage. He soon reaches an inn where a grumpy old man greets him. Initially unfriendly, the man becomes more accommodating when Tuka shows him a silver coin. He asks for Tuka's name, and Tuka uses the alias Hattie to stay at the inn. At night, Tuka explores the town and finds it quite peaceful despite the presence of many outsiders and mercenaries. The town has all the typical shops of a settlement of this size in a high fantasy anime, and also features an adventurer's guild. After gathering all the information he can, he returns to the inn and eats some food, pretending it's delicious even though it's not to his taste. He listens intently to the drunk men at the neighboring table to gather information about the world. The drunk men are discussing the strongest knight orders on the continent. One mentions the holy knights under the Mad Emperor Falcon, who have never lost a war. Others name other popular knight orders and believe that the magic knights of the Urza Kingdom are on par with them. However, They all agree that the most powerful knight order on the continent is the Black Dragon Knights, who destroyed the Holy Kingdom of Nia in record time. They rave about the strength of the Black Dragon Knights, who also have the world's strongest hero killer among them. Having heard enough, Tuka decides to leave and take some food to his pet slime Piggy. As Piggy eats rice, Tuka starts planning for the future. He decides he should first find someone who can read the forbidden magic spell. He recalls that the girl in the forest mentioned meeting the forbidden witch in the Golden Demon Zone. Before that, he plans to use a strengthening agent to boost Piggy's strength. He suddenly remembers the drunk men talking about a newly discovered layer of ruins in their territory, attracting mercenaries from everywhere and boosting the town's prosperity. Tuka thinks he might find the Skeleton King's bones in the ruins, crucial for making the strengthening agent. The next morning, he joins the mercenaries heading to the ruins. They are greeted by Marquis Creed, the lord of the region, who announces a newly found lair in the mill's ruins and offers a reward of 300 gold coins for anyone who discovers the ultimate treasure, the Cup of the Dragon's Eye. He promises to buy all the dungeon loot at a high price and tells the mercenaries they can keep the monster drops. The registration process begins, and Tuka notices a pompous noble named Flash hitting on a hooded girl. Flash remarks that her voice resembles that of a leader of the Holy Knight army from the ruined kingdom of Nia. This sparks gossip among the mercenaries, who wonder if the Night Princess of Nia is truly here, given her substantial bounty. Flash continues to flirt aggressively, even mentioning her physical features, comparing them to the elf princess who once rejected his dinner invitation. The woman tells him he's mistaken, so he demands she remove her hood to prove she's not an elf. Confident that her pointy ears will reveal her true identity, he plans to claim the bounty. However, when he removes the hood, the girl has normal human ears, leaving Flash shocked. Tuka recognizes the girl from the forest but chooses not to intervene as she handles the situation herself, sending Flash away in embarrassment. Afterward, Tuka heads to a shop to buy some equipment but encounters the hooded girl again. She recognizes him and approaches, discussing the raid. Tuka warns her to be cautious with people like Flash, who might seek revenge out of spite. She replies that she doesn't mind and explains she acts rudely to keep people away. Tuka then asks for her help in purchasing tools for exploring the ruins, fearing he might be overcharged. He offers to pay her for her assistance, and the girl accepts gladly as she needs the money. She introduces herself as Mist, a name Tuka realizes is fake. He also introduces himself as Hattie, explaining that he too is using a fake name due to personal circumstances. Mist helps Tuka buy good equipment, and he gives her 3 silver coins for her advice, which is more than she expected. She thanks him and starts to leave but suddenly collapses from exhaustion. Tuka notices the dark circles under her eyes as he supports her, but Mist insists she just needs rest and runs away. The next day, Tuka enters the mill's ruins and immediately finds some mercenaries fleeing from a demon calf, a younger version of the Minotaur he fought in the previous ruins. He paralyzes and poisons the demon before finishing it off with his short sword. Meanwhile, the mercenaries call for their senior to defeat the demon calf, and are astonished to see it defeated by someone with just a single stab of a short sword. Unfazed by the situation, Tuka continues into the ruins and finds that the demons there pose no real threat to him. As he explores, he overhears Flash asking 2 rough mercenaries for help to kill Mist. Flash, unable to tolerate anyone who humiliates him, plans to torture her before killing her, and then feed her remains to the demons. Disturbed by the depravity of such individuals, Tuka decides to intervene. Flash and his henchmen prepare to attack, but Tuka attempts to buy time by apologizing and promising to keep their conversation secret. Flash, however, is determined to kill him. As Flash attacks, Tuka paralyzes him and his men, poisons them, and finds it oddly satisfying to eliminate such filth from the world. He walks away, while Flash curses him, vowing revenge. Tuka left them alive only because powerful demons were approaching. The demons soon consume the paralyzed mercenaries, and Tuka proceeds deeper into the ruins with a clear conscience. He decides to take a brief nap before exploring further, with Piggy on guard. Tuka delves deeper into the ruins, leaving behind a trail of dead monsters. This leads him to being confronted by a skilled adventurer group called the Saber-Toothed Tigers. Their leader, Lily, and vice leader, Foes, suspect that a very powerful enemy is behind the deaths of the monsters and decide to retreat for their safety. They only stop Tuka to offer him the option of joining them. He thanks them but chooses to continue. He believes that killing more demons and scattering them will drive more mercenaries out, improving his chances of obtaining what he seeks. Eventually, he arrives at the room where the Dragon's Eye Cup is kept. Noticing a dragon statue behind it, and having enough anime knowledge to anticipate an attack, Tuka paralyzes and poisons the statue first, and then takes the cup. As the statue dies, Mist appears, surprised that someone reached the room before her. She laments that sleeping cost her the grand prize, but Tuka has no problem giving her the cup. Mist is astonished and asks what she should pay, but Tuka insists she can keep it, explaining that his current persona is extremely naive, especially around attractive girls. Mist feels it would harm her honor to accept something worth 300 gold coins for free, but Tuka persists, saying he doesn't need the cup or the money. He then starts fiddling with the platform, revealing a hidden passage leading deeper into the dungeon. He tells Mist that what he's after is further inside the next floor, and that he used the recruitment offer to reach this point. Mist then offers to be his bodyguard to repay him for the cup, insisting she will be helpful. After some thought, Tuka agrees, setting 2 conditions. She must not pry into his personal affairs, and he can't guarantee they'll exit the ruins soon. Mist agrees immediately, swearing to protect him with her life. Soon after, they encounter a creepy plant monster with golden eyes, which Mist quickly defeats with her sword skills. Tuka applauds her and asks about the golden-eyed demons. Mist explains that these demons have high experience points and help heroes from other worlds level up quickly. She adds that otherworldly heroes can't gain experience from killing humans, so they need to keep killing demons. Mist also mentions that a special magical element from the Demon King turns normal creatures and demons into golden-eyed versions, making them more powerful and fierce. This makes Tuka think of Kiri, the golden hero, and he gets a creepy feeling that his power might be related to this phenomenon. They soon reach a resting area, where Mist senses a nearby monster. Tuka realizes it must be Piggy, so he brings the slime out and introduces it to Mist. They quickly become friends, and Tuka suggests Mist take a nap, as she badly needs rest. She reluctantly agrees and lies down, but Piggy starts dancing in front of her. Mist gets distracted, and Tuka takes advantage of this to put her to sleep with his skills. To his surprise, Mist then glows and reverts to her elven form. Tuka always suspected but now confirms that Mist is actually Siraz, the Princess Knight of the Holy Kingdom of Nia. Meanwhile, in the forest where Tuka defeated the bandits pursuing Mist, the leader of the Black Dragon Knights is observing the carnage. He believes Mist defeated the powerful bandits herself and looks forward to fighting her next. The following day, as Mist wakes up, her transformation skill activates, making her look like a normal human. She panics, fearing Tuka might have seen her true form, but feels relieved when she finds him asleep on the floor. Piggy approaches and starts squeaking, which Tuka interprets as a signal to stop pretending. They resume their dungeon exploration. When they sense the floor rumbling and shaking, they decide to flee. Suddenly, a giant monster bursts through the wall, and Mist recognizes it as the Skeleton King. Tuka identifies it as the dungeon's boss monster, much stronger than any demon they've encountered. Mist knows that the peculiar bone under its chin is its weak spot, and breaking it will ensure their victory. She believes normal mercenaries stand no chance against the Skeleton King, but together they might succeed. The Skeleton King seems to view Mist as a greater threat than Tuka, which Tuka accepts. Mist activates her power, telling Tuka she needs to use it to defeat the boss, but must keep it a secret. She asks him to keep her secret as special armor appears on her. The Skeleton King begins charging an energy blast, and Mist tells Tuka to run if she cannot defeat it. Tuka acts first by paralyzing the boss with his skill. Mist is confused but realizes Tuka is the man she met in the forest as he casts a poison spell on the Skeleton King. The Skeleton King dies from the poison, and Tuka collects the bones needed for the strengthening potion. Tuka observes Mist and realizes her mind is full of questions, so he promises to answer them once they are back on the surface. They start their journey back when Piggy alerts Tuka to something inside the Skeleton King's body. Tuka begins to investigate and discovers a small bundle within the demon's chest cavity. As soon as he picks up the bundle, it starts glowing and a strange symbol appears on it. Opening the bundle, Tuka finds an unusual egg, but Piggy seems very eager to have it, so Tuka decides to carry it with him. Meanwhile, Tuka's classmates have also ventured into their first dungeon. Some students flee as skeletal knights start pursuing them, while a girl sits on the ground crying over her severed arm. Her friend attempts to help her, but they are attacked by monsters. Everyone manages to escape somehow, and Nya stands her ground against the monsters, determined to stop them. However, before she can act, Sho and Kiri arrive and defeat the monsters in one go. Kiri uses his attack without concern for his classmates, forcing Nya to protect them. Kiri, proud of his newfound strength, reveals that he is now level 24. Back in the dungeon city, Tuka and Mist reach the surface, where Mist presents the dragon's eye cup to the guards, attracting everyone's attention to the ultimate treasure of the dungeon. Tuka silently takes his leave, and Mist follows him, informing him that she will receive her reward from the Lord the next day in a public ceremony. Tuka asks if she is free until then, and upon receiving an affirmative answer, he invites Mist to his room that night to discuss some matters. She agrees and takes his hand as he is leaving to thank him again for the cup. At night, Tuka is preparing a strengthening agent when Mist arrives at his door. Tuka tells her he wants to hire her as his escort for the remainder of his journey. He mentions that with the reward money from the cup, she is well set, but he still wants to hire her. He's trying to make her feel indebted by mentioning the cup, even though he doesn't like this approach. Tuka then shows her a map and explains that he wants to reach the Golden Demon Zone at the center of the continent to meet the Forbidden Witch. He claims that, given the many powerful monsters there, he needs someone skilled by his side, and Mist is the only one he can trust. Mist seems hesitant about going to such a dangerous area, and Tuka tells her she can take her time to decide. He then unexpectedly calls her by her real name, Cirrus, and she responds out of habit, only realizing afterward that she has been tricked. Tuka apologizes but reveals he used his skill to put her to sleep in the dungeon, so he knows her secret. He says he needs her as a valuable asset and won't betray her. He knew that what troubled her most about traveling with him was her secret, but now it's out in the open. Mist stops hiding her secrets and explains that she can conceal her true form with the help of spirits, but they need her to sleep to regain their strength. She reveals her true form to Tuka, saying she trusts him now. In return, Tuka discloses his real name so they are even. She agrees to join him as his escort, and Tuka gives her one of the blue crystals he found in the first dungeon as payment. Mist is stunned to see it because the crystal is a rare item called Blue Dragon Stone, which is no longer available on the market. Just this single piece is worth more than the reward she received for turning in the cup. She refuses to accept something so valuable and returns it to Tuka, who thinks she is too good-hearted for her own good. He takes the stone from her and then tosses it back, saying it belongs to her now, and she can discard it if she doesn't want it. She reluctantly accepts it and then tries to tell Tuka about her past and the people still pursuing her. However, he says he is not interested in her past because, as her employer, he only cares about her abilities. The next day, while having breakfast together, people in the inn start making negative comments about them. Tuka tells Mist to ignore them and then asks what she knows about forbidden spells. She tells him that goddess Vicious banned some ancient spells and classified them as forbidden. Tuka thinks that if the goddess banned them, the spells might be dangerous for her. He thanks Mist for the information, and she blushes because it is the first time he has thanked her openly. Afterward, Mist leaves to collect her reward while Tuka goes to the forest to use the strengthening medicine on Piggy. Mist finds herself out of place at a party full of nobles and wealthy men. It is getting late, and she has not yet received her reward. At that moment, the Lord announces a famous magician who can break illusions as entertainment for his guests. Mist worries she might be exposed, and seeing that she is late, Tuka begins to suspect foul play. Back with his classmates, Ye visits goddess Vicious to inquire about treatment for the girl who lost her arm. V says she healed the girl only because she was a B-rank hero. She then asks Ye if she is not joining Kiri's group and tries to manipulate her into thinking it is selfish not to partner with another S-rank hero despite the situation. Ye remains firm and says she cannot work with Kiri at the moment. She vows to fulfill her duties as an S-rank hero on her own, and upon hearing this, V says she will let all the students who did not pass the first trial with her so she can train them. Ye panics and reminds the goddess of their deal that those students would be left unbothered if she fought on their behalf. However, the goddess says she received an order from the king and has no choice. She tells Ye that if she doesn't take the unsuccessful students with her, they will be disposed of, and Ye has no choice but to accept Vicious's order. On Tuka's side, he wonders if Mist has betrayed them and fled with the prize money, or if something has happened to her. The first option seems unlikely, so he decides to find her. On the way, he hears people talking about the girl who got the cup being the wanted elf princess. They say she ran into the forest after her secret was revealed, but it won't save her because the Black Dragon Knights are on her trail. Just then, 3 dragons appear in the sky and head toward the forest where Mist is trying to escape. One of the Dragon Knights attacks her, and Mist first uses her spirit magic to bring it down with an aerial slash. She enchants her sword to defeat the 2nd and 3rd Dragon Knights, but she is exhausted from fighting them, even though they are low-ranking knights. Then, a spear appears. A dragon is charging towards her, but Mist realizes it's a decoy and the real threat is in front of her. She charges ahead and clashes swords with a high-ranking knight named Jaisen, who tells her that she is going to die there. Mist can't use her spirit armor to fight at full strength because of the illusion-breaking spell earlier, and Jaisen keeps pushing her back while revealing that he received orders to kill her on sight instead of capturing her alive. However, he plans to have some fun with her before killing her. He continues to push Mist back, and when she loses her balance and falls, he kicks her sword away before pouncing on her. Fortunately, Tuka arrives just in time, paralyzing Jaisen and his dragon. Mist gets out of the situation and asks Tuka what he's doing there, while Tuka applies a non-lethal poison on Jaisen, putting him to sleep before talking with Mist. He reminds her that they can't discuss personal matters with others around. Tuka explains that he returned to pick her up, but she tells him she can't accept his job offer now because he would also be pursued by the Dragon Knights if he stayed with her. She tries to return the blue dragon stone to him, but he gets irritated and throws a pouch full of dragon stones back at her. Mist is perplexed by this, and Tuka tells her that he can't find a better escort than her and doesn't want to bother trying. He then abruptly asks her to undress. Mist wonders if she heard that correctly. Tuka looks at her, annoyed that she doesn't understand what he wants, and explains that everyone recognized her because of her outfit, so she needs to change to throw off the trail. He then tells her that he needs her to find the Witch of the Woods, as he needs to know what these forbidden spells are, and she might even help her hide her identity better. He then moves towards Jaisen, removes the sleep spell, and asks him who sent him to kill Mist. Jaisen looks up at him, wondering when he will die, but Tuka promises that if he reveals the truth, he will be spared, and Tuka would remove the poison spell. Jaisen decides to reveal the secret, wanting to see how the elf princess would react. But before he can say anything, Tuka senses danger and pulls Mist away as a huge sword smashes Jaisen's head. Tuka turns around to see 3 dragon riders led by a young man with silver hair and glaring red eyes, who declares himself as the strongest troop of humanity, known as Civet. He descends with his 3 companions and introduces their unit as the 5 dragon riders. Jaisen used to be a part of their group, but he talked too much, which is why he had to die. One of them seems a bit more flamboyant with his trendy haircut, while another wants to cosplay as a pirate and suggests using Mist as a ball and tossing her around the field before killing her, as the king himself ordered her death on sight. The flamboyant one tells the pirate to be quiet since the king wants Mist's corpse to look as beautiful as she does in real life. Mist is horrified by what these men are saying. She draws her sword, claiming she won't die so easily, but the men don't take her seriously. Civet offers her a chance to win a duel against him, promising that if she wins, he will leave her alone. However, his attention quickly shifts to Tuka, as he is now more interested in this strange foreign man than in the elf princess. Tuka realizes his life is in grave danger, feeling the power of this man is 100 times greater than what he faced before. Despite this, he smirks and asks Civet if they can have a chat. Civet asks his name, but Tuka gives a fake name, which Civet immediately recognizes and becomes even more intrigued. The pirate, seemingly clueless, asks why Civet is so interested in the boy, but Civet replies that this boy isn't trembling in front of the dragon riders and even wants to converse with the strongest man of humanity. Tuka realizes he needs to play his cards right to survive this and asks Civet if he simply wants to fight the strongest enemies he can find on Earth to satisfy his battle hunger. Civet acknowledges this but claims that few enemies can provide a good fight. Tuka then asks why he doesn't fight Goddess Vis, to which Civet responds that while the goddess is strong, their kingdoms have a peace treaty, but if war ever broke out, he would love to fight the heroes she summoned from another world, as they are supposed to be incredibly strong. Tuka smiles while Civet grows bored with Mist and tells her he doesn't want to fight a weakling like her. He asks her to drop her sword and accept her death. Mist refuses, which annoys the white-haired knight. Tuka decides to sweeten the deal, telling Civet that if he wants to fight a strong opponent who can actually go toe-to-toe with him, he should choose Tuka, as he is a hero from another world. Everyone is shocked, including Mist, who had no idea. Civet laughs, claiming he knew something was different about Tuka. He asks why the hero is wandering so far from his kingdom, and Tuka reveals the truth, explaining that the goddess considered him a different class from other heroes and sent him away. There's no trace of deceit, but Civet believes Tuka must be a very strong hero, and that's why he was sent alone. He asks what Tuka wants in return, and Tuka replies that he wants to postpone their match for now. Civet laughs and asks what he will get in return. Tuka says he will train to become stronger than anyone, even the goddess herself, and then return to fight Civet in an all-out death match. Civet laughs maniacally and says he would love to see that one day, telling Tuka he is free to go on his way, and that the dragon riders will leave after dealing with the elf princess. Tuka's expression changes, and he tells Civet that he can't let them do anything to Mist because he needs her to help him get stronger. Civet laughs again, saying he's fine with that as he really wants to fight Tuka soon. Karen tries to protest, but Civet tells him to shut up if he wants to stay alive. Soon, they all take flight, and Civet tells Tuka to get stronger before his patience runs out. Tuka smiles and bids him farewell, waiting for them to come within his intended range before using his paralysis spell on them. Civet realizes something is wrong, but it's too late as all the dragons and their riders fall one by one. Tuka laughs, saying this isn't some heroic tale where people honor their words, but his gritty story of revenge against the world, and he doesn't care how he achieves it. Civet struggles on the ground, angrily asking what Tuka did, but Tuka doesn't bother to reply and uses poison on all of them, killing them immediately. Civet continues to struggle even after being hit by the poison spell, reminding Tuka of the Soul Eater, the only other monster that managed to move a bit while poisoned. Civet is much stronger, though, as he picks up his lance to throw at Tuka but ends up collapsing from exhaustion. Suddenly, an alarm goes off for backup, and a huge horde of dragon riders arrives. Civet tries to issue orders, telling them to keep their distance and kill both Tuka and Mist, but the dragon riders are too shocked to see the strongest four, including their leader Civet, either dead or dying. Tuka tells Mist she can escape while she still has a chance, but she insists on staying by his side as his bodyguard. Tuka smiles and connects with Piggy, using his newly learned ability. Soon, Piggy emerges and sends a bunch of tentacles towards the flying dragon riders, extending Tuka's range as he uses his paralysis spell on them. Soon, dragons and humans start falling from the sky. Tuka decides to use these men as test subjects and casts various spells on them to experiment. He applies a berserk spell on Karen, causing him to become enraged and start calling the manager, while he casts a darkness spell on the pirate, making him completely blind and struggling to see what's happening. Once he finishes, Tuka leaves them to die and paralyzes them again to make sure they can't escape. Suddenly, he realizes that everyone is dead, but Civet is somehow still surviving, which genuinely shocks him. Tuka approaches Civet as he takes his final breath and collapses on the ground, finally dead. Afterward, Tuka and Mist head into the forest, knowing that at least no one will be following them. However, Mist mentions that there might still be the Black Dragon Rider known as the Hero Killer who could be after her. Tuka suddenly remembers that he killed someone like that, which surprises Mist, who wonders how strong this man is. She pledges her loyalty to him and promises to stay by his side through any trouble, while he promises to repay her in kind. They begin their journey together through the forest, unaware of the adventures awaiting them. After several days, Tuka and Mist arrive at a new town bustling with life, as the market is alive with conversations, laughter, and children playing. That night, while Tuka explores various shops, he becomes intrigued by a strange mask on display. The shopkeeper tells him that the mask is a replica of the Fly King, a demon king from long ago who defended the demon lands against a massive army and saved his race from extinction. Despite this, some politicians exiled him from the country, claiming he was the root of all evil, and the Fly King was never seen again. Tuka ends up purchasing the mask and takes it back to his tent, trying it on and reflecting on how his story is similar to the Fly King's. Unlike the Demon King, he will definitely take revenge on the goddess. The next morning, Tuka sets out to explore the city with Mist, who believes their enemies wouldn't expect them to be in the heart of the city. Still, Tuka remains cautious, checking to ensure they aren't being followed. He suddenly notices a large old building, and Mist informs him that this building is known as the Colosseum, where slaves and mercenaries fight against each other and animals in hopes of gaining glory, gold, or freedom. He realizes that this is essentially like the Roman arenas in his world and asks who controls this area. Mist says that the Kingdom of USA manages the entire region and explains that, nowadays, the Colosseum has turned into a freak show, whereas in its early days, many nobles and soldiers fought each other to demonstrate their strength, and the best were sometimes chosen to act as commanders of the army. Tuka isn't interested in all this nonsense and tells Mist to follow him to a fancier inn. She complains about saving money and advises him to book only one room instead of two. Tuka turns to see if she's joking, but the girl is straightforward and says she doesn't mind them sharing a bed. Later that evening, they head down to the tavern for a meal, and Tuka notices that the place is unusually crowded. He listens quietly as some men gossip about how the Black Dragon Knights are all dead after going to find the Elven Princess and make fun of her by saying she must be hiding in a kitchen making a sandwich. Tuka agrees with these misogynistic jokes and continues listening as someone claims that a group of mages calling themselves Ashintu has supposedly killed all the Dragon Knights, and others believe they might have killed Mist too, not knowing she's sitting right in front of them. Mist tells Tuka that Ashintu has been the talk of the town lately, as they are dark mages who seem to worship an evil cursed god. Just as she is explaining, the door opens and a group of hooded figures, claiming to be the sorcerers of Ashintu, enter the tavern. They walk through the crowd, shoving some people from a table before sitting down and asking for drinks. Tuka realizes that these figures don't seem very intimidating, but since the Dragon Knights died mysteriously in the kingdom's eyes, the mages can claim their curses were effective. Suddenly, Tuka overhears two men discussing that the death of the Dragon Knights could be the work of the Forbidden Witch, and one of them claims that someone has seen her nearby. Tuka immediately approaches them, ordering a round of beer and food in exchange for information. The men are happy to oblige and tell him that the Forbidden Witch is believed to be a dark elf who hasn't been seen for the past 10 years, but recently someone claimed to have seen her fighting in the Colosseum as a blood fighter. He asks where he can find this beast woman, and they tell him he would need to get through the Colosseum and that he would need the Duke's permission. Suddenly, the door opens and a cheetah woman enters the tavern. The men immediately smile, claiming Tuka is in luck because this is the beast woman they were talking about. Tuka quickly moves toward the beast girl, offering her a drink and some food. The cheetah introduces herself as Eve and asks what he needs. Tuka cuts to the chase and asks if she has seen the forbidden witch. Eve disappoints him, saying that's just a rumor started by someone. It's true she once entered the Golden Forest where the witch supposedly lives, but she never actually met her. She asks why he wants to know about the witch, and Tuka lies, saying he is a scholar wanting to make a biopic about her. Eve simply warns him not to go near the forest as he wouldn't survive a single day inside. With that, Eve leaves the tavern, and Tuka and Mist soon depart. Mist confidently tells Tuka that Eve was lying, and Tuka agrees, deciding to investigate further the next day. They return to their inn for the night, where Tuka realizes he forgot to feed his slime and worries about a potential PETA lawsuit. They soon start eating some old cheese sandwiches Tuka had in his magic bag, which Mist enjoys. Tuka wonders how they can get more information from Eve, and Mist replies that blood fighters care only about money because it can earn them freedom from their masters, but a large sum is needed. Tuka decides to learn more about Eve the next morning, while Mist burns off some calories in her armor, which leaves her vital parts exposed. She practices her swordsmanship as Tuka watches in admiration, impressed by her skills. He asks if she could teach him some basic moves, and she agrees. She tells him to go all out and attack, but Tuka wonders if a weaker woman can handle his full strength. Mist reassures him, saying she was an instructor for the Holy Knights before. Tuka swings at her with full force, but she dodges. Tuka steps aside and restrains Mist's arms behind her back. Tuka quickly submits, so Mist lets him go. As they both sweat profusely, Mist realizes that washing clothes is typically a woman's job, so she heads off to clean them. However, she starts oddly sniffing Tuka's cloak. When Tuka approaches from behind, she quickly hides what she was doing and tells him she's accustomed to washing clothes. Later, Mist goes to bed while Tuka sits reading his dark magic book. Unfortunately, like someone with dyslexia, he can't make sense of it. He appreciates Mist's efforts to be helpful and decides to thank her the next morning. Before he can get to sleep, Mist wakes up and Tuka mentions his insomnia. Mist promptly takes out her herb bag and presents 3 different herbs with various effects. She explains that the first herb will make you sleepy and relax, while the second one will energize you. Curious but skeptical, Tuka decides to try them. He takes out a couple of cups, adds some soup cubes, and pours hot water into them. Mist then pours one of the herbs into a cup but realizes she mistakenly added the energizing potion instead of the relaxing one. Tuka worries this could be problematic since they're alone in a room with no one else around, but he focuses on his goal of seeking revenge against the goddess Vicey. As Mist bows, having finally identified the king of all slaves, the next morning, they return to the city for more information. Mist comes back with some interesting news. She reveals that Eve was brought here as a slave 3 years ago and demonstrated her incredible skill in her first fight. Since then, she has been undefeated in the arena, and tomorrow will be her final fight as a slave. Tuka is concerned because this means Eve already has enough money to buy her freedom, making bribery unlikely. Surprisingly, Mist adds that there's more to it. Apparently, Eve earned enough money for her freedom 2 years ago but stayed to buy the freedom of a child slave as well. She also mentions that most of the strongest blood fighters have died in their last matches, and she suspects the old Duke rigs the fights against them, leading to their deaths. Tuka wonders if Eve is aware that her final fight might be fatal and could ruin her dreams, while Eve sharpens her blade for the upcoming battle. Mist asks Tuka if there's any chance Eve might survive, but Tuka believes the Duke would never allow her to live and will likely attempt to kill her by introducing a new fighter who will become everyone's new favorite. Mist is shocked and asks what their plan is for tomorrow, but Tuka replies they don't need to wait until then. They will act today. Later that evening, Tuka tracks Eve to a dark alley and blocks her path. She's puzzled and asks what he wants since she already told him she hasn't seen the witch. Tuka asserts that he knows she's lying, but Mist tries to deny it. Tuka insists they know she's lying and demands the truth. Eve adopts a defensive stance and reaches for her sword, but Tuka tells her to relax, as they only want to help. Eve keeps her hand on her sword while Tuka informs her that the Duke plans to have her killed in the match tomorrow, which could cause problems for them as he seeks the witch's location. He directly asks Eve if they should abduct the girl she's hiding and take her out of the slave city tonight. Eve becomes enraged, threatening to sever their hands if they touch the girl, but Tuka reassures her that they mean no harm. Mist adds that they know Eve has been fighting these past 2 years solely for the sake of the little girl, Liz. Realizing they know a lot about her, Eve calms down slightly, stating she cannot back out of tomorrow's fight and must participate. Tuka asks if they should ensure Liz's safety, but Eve says that if they don't adhere to the city's rules and try to flee, bounties will be placed on their heads, leading to endless pursuit by soldiers and assassins. She admits she might have run away if alone, but with Liz, she can't take any risks. Tuka insists he can take her to the Golden Zone where the witch lives, as it's a safe area no one would dare enter. Eve responds that even he wouldn't be able to enter the zone due to its extreme danger. Tuka promises that he will ensure Liz's safety regardless of the circumstances. Eve considers this and notices Mist's martial arts expertise, asking Tuka about his own abilities. Tuka downplays himself, claiming he can easily defeat the Skeleton King. Eve smiles, saying that a Skeleton King is a formidable opponent but pales in comparison to what's in the Golden Zone. Tuka then reveals that he defeated the Black Dragon Knights. Eve dismisses it with a laugh, saying someone like him could never face even the weakest Dragon Knight. Tuka then raises his arm and uses his paralysis ability on her before she can draw her sword, completely immobilizing her while she struggles to break free. He tells her to stay calm, as struggling will only deplete her HP. He claims that with this ability, he managed to defeat the hero of humanity single-handedly. Mist approaches and removes her cloak, revealing she is the elven princess the Dragon Knights were after, and that she witnessed the battle firsthand. Tuka then jiachu the paralysis spell on Eve, who finally believes in his abilities but says that despite everything, she will not accept their help and will take the legal route to win her final match and free Liz from slavery, trusting her own strength over someone she just met. Tuka questions if she thinks the Duke will let her go easily, given that he has heard the Duke is quite problematic. Eve believes that despite the Duke's unethical nature, he is still human and can't be so ruthless as to go against his own word. She will rely on her skills to defeat her opponent tomorrow and start a new life. Tuka decides to leave, telling Eve that if she changes her mind, they will be waiting at the city gates until dawn. They then return to the city, only to find a large crowd gathered around dark mages who claim that a man in this house insulted their god, so they executed him. They ignore them and proceed. As night falls, they hear the dark mages harassing a poor girl for no reason. They attempt to involve her in their cult, but she refuses, resulting in a slap across the face. Mist gets furious and tries to draw her sword, but Tuka stops her and instead uses his berserk spell on one of them. The man goes wild, attacking and biting anyone nearby, giving the girl a chance to escape. Tuka then uses the berserk spell on the remaining mages, causing them to fight each other as he and Mist leave the scene. After midnight, Tuka and Mist head towards the front gate again, with Mist asking if he truly believes Eve will seek their help. Tuka replies that he is certain the Duke is a complete bastard, and if Eve goes the legal route, she will be severely screwed. Eve has been troubled all night, struggling to sleep, and wonders if the Duke will keep his promise. She decides to directly ask the Duke if their deal about freeing Liz is still on, but before she can enter the room, Eve overhears a soldier discussing tomorrow's battle with the Duke. The soldier inquires if there are any changes to the plan, but the Duke assures that there will be no alterations and that Eve is set to die the next day. This revelation shocks Eve, especially when the Duke mentions administering a poison that will numb her senses. The soldier laughs as the Duke talks about the money he had to spend on the shrine built in Eve's honor because she was well loved by the audience, but he views her as a subhuman who shouldn't be alive. Eve can hardly believe what she's hearing. When the soldier asks about the little girl, the Duke replies that he will either raise her as a perfect wife or, if not, exploit her for money. The conversation turns to laughter while Eve grits her teeth before heading back to her cell. She makes a decision, takes a cloak, and goes to the main gate where she finds Tuka and Mist waiting. Tuka is surprised by her early arrival, but she says she's decided to accept his offer and escape, as she can't trust the Duke. Tuka states that he wants something in return, and Eve agrees to reveal the witch's location and enter the Golden Demon Zone with them. The deal is made, and Tuka prepares to kidnap the little girl. Meanwhile, across the city, the dark elf works in a tavern, cleaning tables while the obese owner yells at her to work faster. The girl tries her best, but the owner, lacking any common sense, begins to hit Liz for no reason until Liz collapses. The girl tries to stay strong, taking comfort in Eve's strength. The owner starts yelling in Liz's ears, but the door suddenly flies open, and Eve storms in, furious. She draws her sword, and the owner begs for mercy, claiming she was ordered by the Duke to discipline Liz harshly or face punishment herself. Eve tells the owner she's leaving with Liz, and that if she wants to live, she should tell everyone Liz was kidnapped and that Eve went after them. The owner cries and agrees, apologizing to Liz for her mistreatment. Tuka then enters the tavern, wearing his mask, and tells Eve to go ahead while he checks something. Once they leave, he approaches the fat owner and tells her that he sees through her act. He mentions he has been through abuse himself and can't let her go easily. The owner tries to bluff, saying she's the only one who can save them from the Duke's wrath, but Tuka uses paralysis and a poison spell, making her even uglier as she begins to die slowly. Tuka then sets up the scene to look like a robbery before escaping through the sewer. They navigate the underground tunnels, and Liz introduces herself, begging Tuka to let her join them to stay with Eve. Tuka expresses concern about the dangers ahead but agrees when Eve insists she'll be fine as long as she's with her. Tuka introduces the slime from his backpack before they exit the sewers. They enter the forest, and Eve tells Tuka she completely trusts him and is ready to risk her life for him. Tuka asks about this sudden trust, and Eve replies that Tuka could have used other methods to get information or threatened her with Liz's kidnapping, but he chose to be honest about his motives. She asks why he wants to meet the witch, and he explains he has an ancient text he believes the witch can decode. Eve inquires if he plans to harm the witch, but Tuka says he has no intention of hurting her as long as she doesn't attack them. They continue on horseback, and Tuka tells Mist that Eve's connection to the witch and her being a dark elf like Liz might be useful. Suddenly, Tuka notices lights from the kingdom, indicating an alarm has been raised. Eve assumes someone must have seen her and offers to hold them off while the rest escape, but Tuka insists they will stand together. He distracts half the forces by sending them after horses while they hide in the bushes for a surprise attack. He instructs Eve and Liz to retreat, as he needs Mist in the front. With everything in place, Tuka puts on his mask, ready for the final confrontation with the Duke's forces. Noticing a trap in the middle of the forest, Mwaji shouts for the one responsible to come out of hiding and approach them. Then, Sarah's decides to step out from behind the tree where she was concealed. The gang leader recognizes her as a Chim Fly sword, a type of subordinate that appears in the Lord Fly's ranks. With that, he asks the Chim sword to hand over the leopard woman and the elf girl, promising to let her leave alive and, moreover, to welcome her into the Ashing group. However, Sarah's refuses the offer and asks what he intends to do. The leader responds that he will make her suffer with his curses to the point where she would prefer death. To frighten her even more, he claims that even the 5 dragons could not defend themselves from his curses. At that moment, she recalls that the 5 dragons were killed by her group, and Sarah's takes a step back, asking them not to harm Eve and Lisbeth. The leader of the Ashing group promises to act as she requested, and Sarah's agrees to lead them to the 2, asking them to follow her. However, the leader notices something suspicious and states that she doesn't intend to hand over Eve and Lisbeth so easily. Sarah's asks what he means by that, and he makes it clear that her words betray her, revealing that she doesn't genuinely intend to deliver the 2, as she's claiming. After all, Sarah's herself asked everyone to accompany her, something that wouldn't be necessary, as only a few men would suffice to go with her. Therefore, he believes that Sarah's intended to lure them into a trap in the forest. He then orders his men to keep their distance and prepare to attack. Before continuing, the leader explains that his soldiers are successors of the Assassin's Guild. However, a certain hero from another world declared the guild as an evil institution and wiped it out. The Ashing group took the place of the exterminated guild as curse users. Sarah's realizes that he is talking about very strong poisons that kill their targets without leaving traces, something that has nothing to do with curses, as the leader claims. The leader continues his story, saying that the tragedy of the Dragon Knights fell into the lap of the Ashing group, as did the death of the 5 dragons. Upon hearing this, Sarah's immediately understands what's happening. The group invented a convenient excuse, claiming that all of this happened due to the curses they possess. When she realizes that she uncovered the scheme, the leader admits that they took advantage of the curse story to proclaim themselves as the slayers of the 5 dragons, strengthening their lies and maintaining fear among people, until they would eventually be exposed as a farce. Upon hearing all of this, Sarah's asks what his real goal is with these lies. The leader replies that his initial objective is to use Duke Zoan to gain an important status in the nation. But in the end, his true intention is to conquer the entire country, starting with the people. The Ashing leader then realizes that Sarah's is not accompanied by her allies and asks where they are. Sarah's responds that it's just her, Eve, and Liz in the forest, but the leader refuses to believe her, thinking that Sarah's would never have the courage to face the entire group alone. Realizing that he doesn't believe her, Sarah's removes her mask, revealing that she is the true person responsible for the defeat of the 5 dragons. Even so, the leader continues to doubt her and claims that Sarah's wouldn't be able to defeat them alone. She then asks why he's so certain of that, and the leader responds that she simply wouldn't be able to surpass the strongest human. With that, he calls the man who would be Eve's final opponent and introduces him as Belga. Behind him stands Vagan, Belga's older brother. However, the family doesn't stop there. Besides these 2, there is also a younger brother named Zaraz. After introducing the 3, The leader asks what Ceres intends to do now, surrounded by his subordinates. Ceres then falls to her knees and says that from that point on, the rest is up to Tuka. He quickly paralyzes all the Ashing members and poisons them. After that, Tuka approaches the group leader and explains that the trap set for them was actually a bluff. Tuka knew from the start that they would notice the trap and not move forward. Therefore, they fell into a trap within another trap. Additionally, Tuka instructed Ceres to act as if she was trying to lure them into the forest, so they would suspect a larger plan and think they were in control of the situation. In the end, everything went as Tuka had planned from the beginning. However, he also credits the success of the mission to Ceres, who managed to follow all of his instructions. He then asks Ceres to go to Eve to update her on the situation. Shortly after, another troop begins to approach them. Eve briefly analyzes the troop, and Tuka paralyzes and kills the entire poisoned army. The Duke himself appears and promises to kill Eve no matter what. To further anger her, he says he will sell Liz to a brothel and make her serve clients while wearing a leopard mask. Despising the Duke, Tuka attempts to paralyze him, but receives a notification that he has reached the maximum limit of active targets. He then improvises. Instead of paralyzing him, he simply poisons him, making it easier for Eve to kill him. The surviving warriors decide to flee when they realize they are cornered, but Tuka orders Eve to kill everyone who tries to escape. The Duke starts getting angry with his soldiers and says he won't allow them to flee until they manage to kill Tuka. He begins to lose his sanity alone. Evis thanks Tuka because, thanks to him, she felt joy during a battle again. Fighting alongside him brought back the excitement she used to feel. Then, Eve charges at the warriors, killing them one by one. The Duke, realizing he will need to flee, promises revenge when they meet again. But Tuka uses his paralysis ability to prevent him from escaping, calling him an idiot because he never intended to let him get away. Afterward, Tuka lets Eve take care of the rest. She explains that she would have no problem forgiving him if the Duke had only tried to deceive her, but since he also planned to lay his hands on Liz, Eve proceeds with the execution, decapitating him. After that, Tuka asks Ceres to take care of Liz and prepare to leave. He then uses the freeze ability on one of the corpses, explaining that when used on a body, the ability treats the corpse as an object, allowing it to be turned into powder, which lets him dispose of the bodies without leaving any traces. Additionally, Tuka plans to make the bodies disappear to confuse people because if they simply vanish, it will raise suspicion about their existence. Jean discovers that the Duke's entire army, including the Ashing group, has been wiped out, ruining his plan to turn them into subordinates. However, he orders his men to at least find the bodies of the Ashing members so he can provide a plausible explanation to the goddess. Meanwhile, Liz talks to Ceres about some false beliefs that an old woman instilled in her mind. Ceres tells her to forget everything she heard and says that from now on, she should only trust the words of people who genuinely care about her. Hearing this, Liz says she will only listen to Ceres and her friends, following their advice as if they were her older sisters. After Tuka returns to the location, Ceres suggests that he get some sleep while she keeps watch. However, Tuka decides to stay there as well since he can't sleep. During the conversation, he asks her to let him touch her elf ears. He touches her and feels a strange sensation upon touching her ears for the first time. Ceres, slightly embarrassed, decides to change the subject, asking if he has any special feelings for Eve or Liz. After all, the way he interacts with the two conveys a strong kindness, similar to what he shows when he's near her. Tuka replies that he is kind to Eve because she reminds him a lot of his uncle's personality, although the way of speaking is different. When talking about his uncles, Tuka says they are the only reason he wants to return to his world. As for Liz, Tuka sees her as a version of himself, as both of them suffered abuse from older people. However, the only thing that differentiates them is Tuka's hostility, who spares no effort to kill anything that threatens him. Moreover, he doesn't seek to save that world. Instead, Tuka only wants to carry out his selfish revenge. Therefore, he makes it clear that Ceres can withdraw her support for him whenever she wants, as they are treading that path solely because of him. However, Ceres says she also has her own vision of the goddess of Alien, so she doesn't think of abandoning the mission. Tuka then agrees to grant any request she has, as he feels he owes her for staying by his side until now. But before continuing, Tuka puts Liz to sleep and says she can think about it calmly. Meanwhile, Sogo secretly trains with Na. Na asks the girl not to tell anyone about the training because it would be practically impossible to get Vicio's permission for them to train. The next day, Sarah suggests they give a name to the mercenary group they are part of since they will need to identify themselves when crossing the land of monsters. She proposes the name Lord Fly Warriors, and everyone approves of her suggestion. Moving forward, they arrive at the land of the golden-eyed monsters. Eve asks Tuka to place some mana in her hand, and thus, she visualizes a map with a red dot, which supposedly marks the location of the Witch of Taboos, according to the information she received. As night falls, Tuka recalls the reasons that made him hate the goddess, channeling all that hatred as he gazes at the land of monsters, a place filled with beasts that will give him a lot of XP. The next day, the goddess congratulates the students for leveling up, but makes it clear that it won't be enough. After all, they still lack combat skills and technique. With that in mind, she decides to call upon the most famous warriors from all the nations to train them. The goddess also informs them that the forces of the Great Demon Empire are mobilizing and that the gods need the heroes to continue leveling up while learning to fight for real. For that reason, she intends to take them to train in the land of the golden-eyed monsters. My friends, if she crosses paths with Tuka, he will get very angry, and things won't end well. The following morning, the group prepares to venture into the dangerous forest. Before entering, they take a page from sweatshops and give all their baggage to the dark elf. Tuka suggests that doing so will increase their chances of survival, and the others agree, entering the forest. As they begin crossing a meadow, Tuka and Eve both sense something amiss, and out of nowhere, a massive lizard demon appears, much like something out of Florida. Tuka quickly realizes this creature is different from the usual lizard monsters. Suddenly, the demon opens its alien-like mouth, revealing disgusting teeth, and immediately lunges at Eve. She deflects the first couple of strikes and dodges its tail swipe, while Tuka takes advantage of the distraction to close in and casts a paralysis spell. The monster freezes in place, and Tuka follows up with a poison curse, which proves highly effective, killing the creature shortly after. Pleased with this outcome, Tuka is relieved his spells work on the local creatures. He tells Eve that this one was probably weaker, considering even the monsters in the earlier dungeons were stronger. That thought reassures them, as the enemies here may not be so tough for now. Tuka approaches the dead monster and stabs it. Mist, curious, asks what he's doing. Tuka hands her a book, pointing out an image of a strange creature resembling the thing attached to the lizard's face. He suspects it's a forbidden item and wants to take it along for further study. They then prepare to go deeper into the woods. Soon, they reach a river, and the only way across is by jumping from rock to rock. With Eve's help, Tuka manages to make it to the other side. Liz is next to follow, and Eve offers to take her bags, but Tuka insists Liz should do it herself to build confidence. Eve is worried that Liz might fall, and sure enough, Liz slips mid-jump. Fortunately, the slime catches her before she plunges into the water, preventing a needless accident. Afterward, Mist tries her luck hopping across the stones, but she also slips and falls into the stream. Completely soaked, she starts sneezing, and Tuka offers her his cloak, which only makes her more drenched. Eve jokes about them needing a private moment, but abruptly stops as her instincts warn her of danger. She tells Liz to step back and summons Tuka to the front, saying she's detected a strong monster that she can't handle alone. Tuka steps forward and instructs Eve to act as bait while he sets a trap. He quickly hides behind a tree as two enormous, albeit dim-witted, insect-like creatures start knocking down trees to get closer. As they reach his range, Tuka steps out and casts his paralysis spell, freezing them in place. Feeling proud, Tuka is confident he's managed to stop creatures even a mighty gladiator couldn't. He approaches the frozen monsters and casts a berserk spell, causing them to bleed out and die violently. Afterward, he calmly walks up to the bodies and stabs them as well. Eve, somewhat sarcastically, asks if he plans to eat them, but Mist interrupts, saying the creatures are classified as forbidden items in her dark arts book. According to her, these items are used to greatly enhance a slime's power, and Tuka agrees that she's right. As they prepare to move forward, they feel a strange presence nearby but can't quite pinpoint its source. Suddenly, the slime acts up and tries to escape from the bag. Tuka opens it, revealing a mysterious egg that begins to glow before hatching into a strange blue horse, which starts darting around erratically. Neither Tuka nor Mist recognizes the creature, but since the horse seems harmless, Tuka decides to keep it and see what happens. Mist soon notices a tumor-like growth on the horse's back and wonders what it might be. Tuka realizes the tumor is actually a mana crystal and starts transferring his mana into the horse without hesitation. The horse resists at first, but Tuka holds it still, noticing that it's getting stronger. The horse begins to glow, radiating a purple aura, and transforms into a giant black stallion. Impressed, Tuka wonders if it could also carry their luggage, but the horse seems to want more mana. Tuka, still in a post-nut clarity state, hesitates but eventually gives in and transfers more mana into the creature. This time, the horse turns red and morphs again, this time into an 8-legged black horse with massive horns. Despite its odd appearance, the horse looks cool, so Tuka decides to keep it for aesthetic purposes. The horse then sloppily licks Mist, much to her discomfort. By nightfall, they find shelter near an abandoned temple. While the women tend to tasks inside, Tuka gazes up at the night sky. Mist soon joins him, commenting on the progress they've made, thanks largely to the horse. Tuka agrees, though he's distracted by a strange light coming from the far end of the forest. Realizing it's in the direction of the kingdom of Alan, Tuka deduces that the goddess must have sent the other heroes into the forest. He's right, as his classmates are also battling strange insect monsters in the same forest. Despite the challenges, Kiri has grown strong enough to wipe out an entire swarm of monsters with a single attack, proudly declaring that he'll become the future king of the land. Back at the temple the next morning, Eve wakes up to find Tuka missing. Mist notes that even the slime is gone, but Eve reassures her that Tuka wouldn't abandon them in the middle of the demon zone. They head outside and are surprised to find Tuka sitting next to a giant demon corpse, repeatedly stabbing it. Eve is shocked that he defeated such a powerful monster alone, but Tuka explains that it attacked during the night, and he didn't want to wake them. They pack up and set out again, hoping to cover more ground before the approaching storm hits. As they walk, Tuka asks Liz if she's still afraid of the forest. She admits that she was, but Mist had reassured her that as long as Tuka is with them, they'll make it out alive. Tuka realizes they trust him a little too much and starts wondering if he'll be able to protect them if a much stronger enemy appears. His thoughts are interrupted when they come across a hole in the wall that could serve as a shortcut, significantly reducing their travel time to the witch's home. Eve starts dreaming aloud about finding a cozy little house where she can live with Liz peacefully for the rest of her life. Everyone feels hopeful, thinking their journey might soon end when suddenly, a massive monster appears behind Eve. Mist and Tuka both try to rush to her aid, but they're too far away. Luckily, Eve, ever the strong and independent feminist, draws her sword and slices the monster in half. She steps back and asks Tuka if he knows what kind of creature it was, but Tuka casts a paralysis spell just in case. Despite the monster being dead, Tuka feels uneasy, and soon after, a bright light bursts from the demon's corpse, causing it to scream like Jojo Siwa in a new music video. Everyone covers their ears in pain. Tuka quickly touches the ground and realizes they've walked into a trap. He senses a massive horde of monsters approaching from all directions, far too many for him to handle. He wonders if they'll survive this ambush. If you enjoyed this, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell. If you've made it this far, you'll also enjoy these other videos on the screen. Take care, and see you next time.